Good morning, everybody. Michelle just told me 3 seconds ago that I could say good morning and welcome, or good afternoon and welcome. So traditionally, we like to do a bit of a land acknowledgement at the beginning of important meetings like this. And instead of doing just a traditional land acknowledgement, I like to just say something about New Brunswick that really speaks to me and that I appreciate. And this is something on the weekend. I got to go for, actually, this was yesterday. I got to take my daughter outside for a walk, and it's a beautiful day, and we were feeling the sunshine. We were trying to get some vitamin D, and it was just such a lovely walk through nature, even though we were right in the middle of the sunsets. The trees and the birds are out, and you can smell spring. And I felt so grateful to be here and to be able to spend time with my family and people that I love on this land. So that's my version of a land acknowledgement for today. But welcome. This is a great opportunity. When Michelle approached me and asked if we could host this, I think I just like a nanosecond and said, of course we can. Because this is a fantastic opportunity for us to further this conversation, to bring students in, to bring in industry partners, and to have those groups come together so that we can continue to have what I just shared with you about what I appreciated about being able to be outdoors and have that. We need to make sure that we're coming together and working together towards that. And part of what you'll hear today is part of Atlantic Canada's commitment to that. So this is a great opportunity. I'm hoping there'll be an opportunity for questions. So make sure if you have questions, take some notes. And I'm sure you will enjoy the conversation here today. So welcome.
Thanks, Jody. So my name is Michelle Robichaud. I'm the president of the Atlantica Center for Energy, and really pleased to be here today back in my old stomping grounds. So I actually used to be an instructor here at this campus and spent many a year sitting in the chairs evaluating students who are up doing their final presentations. And so it's, classrooms flipped again, which is perfectly fine with me. But I do have one of my former students, Leah Butler, who's here, and she is the project coordinator for Fuel for the Future. So I'm just going to give you a little lowdown on what the Atlantica Center for Energy is, why we have this project called Fuel for the Future. And then Leah is going to come up, talk a little bit about Fuel for the Future, which you'll hear a little bit more at the end of the day as well, and introduce our speakers. So each of our speakers are going to touch on a couple of different components. All of them, surprisingly, are involved with several aspects of clean fuels. And then there will be an opportunity for questions. So please be sure to write your questions down. Leah will moderate a discussion. We do have some people online as well, and we are recording this session so that we might use it for future classrooms to be able to utilize and learn about clean fuels. So the Atlantica Center for Energy, we are an advocacy group. We're funded by industry. We're really pleased to be the voice of energy in Atlantic Canada. So our members represent some of the largest energy producers, consumers, and distributors in Atlantic Canada. And the energy sector plays a very large role in Atlantic Canada in terms of workforce. For those of you who don't know, or if you haven't already been following Fuel for the Future on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook, you'll have seen some of the posts where we talk about how much more people who work in the energy sector make than the average Canadian. So jobs they're good jobs. They pay really well. And we have some fantastic employers who are here doing some really great things for the future of our planet, but also to transition our current energy systems. And for those of you who are in that program and a couple of others, you'll understand that we're just not going to turn the light switch off and everything be run by windmills and solar panels. There's a long transition period. And so our members were really working towards how do we transition economically so that we all prosper on an ongoing basis. So long-winded Atlantica Center for Energy. We applied for this project with Government of Canada through Natural Resources Canada, had a project called Clean Fuels Awareness. And from our members, we heard that some of their biggest challenges is having young people understand what the job opportunities are in traditional sectors. So we have traditional oil and gas companies here who are transitioning. And the real impact of the energy transition is having traditional companies make that switch. And so young people think that oil and gas companies are bad. They're not. If you drive a vehicle or got here other than an electric vehicle, and even your electric vehicle was powered by a house that is likely fed by an electricity grid that has natural gas and other fossil fuel fired electricity. So it's really important that you recognize that you have a really important role to play in transitioning our economy to a cleaner, greener. And we all want that. All of the companies that are involved in the sector do. So clean fuels awareness. So Leah's going to talk about the 3 sort of clean fuels that we're focused on, but this project is specifically geared at post-secondary students who will be graduating and possibly looking at opportunities in the energy sector. Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to Leah Butler. Leah is a graduate of the class of 2021 to 2022, right? From NBCC's Business Admin Marketing program. And she was in my last class, that's right, I remember that, that I graduated, and I have 100 minions out there working away. Anyway, thanks, Leah.
Yes, thank you, Michelle. So hello, my name is Leah Butler. I'm project coordinator for Fuel for the Future. And as Michelle said, I have a diploma in marketing from MBCC. I also have a bachelor's of arts from UNB. So I have no background at all in clean fuels. So a year ago when I started this project, I had to learn a ton in order to put everything together. And one of the things that I noticed is there are different sort of resources and everything for clean fuels, but a lot of them are very like high up and technical, or it's like for children. There's not a whole lot in between for our college level students to learn about, and especially stuff related to Atlantic Canada. So that was the whole goal of the project, was to make something for you guys so that you will have a resource and you know where to go to for the basics.
Sorry, that's me.
Okay, so maybe. There we go. Okay. Yes. So Fuel for the Future, fuelforfuture.ca is our website. We have 3 clean fuel learning pathways that you can take on our website. We've got renewable natural gas, biofuels, and clean hydrogen, which includes wind, solar, and nuclear energy. These pathways will teach you the basics, so you can learn what those clean fuels are, how they're made, and what companies are making them here in Atlantic Canada. And when I say the basics, I really do mean the basics. They take like 15 minutes to do. There's some videos in there, a couple quizzes to make sure that you're paying attention. But you can learn what companies are working in each of those sectors on our website. And then you can also do your own research. We've got a great resources page that links to all the companies as well. So it is really your spot to start your learning into clean fuels. And as part of our program, we are also offering bursaries. So post-secondary students and Indigenous youth in Atlantic Canada are eligible to win 3 of our bursaries. So if you complete at least one of the clean fuel learning pathways, that will enter you into a draw for a $1,000 bursary. And then we're also drawing for 2 $500 bursaries for students who complete our Clean Fuels Awareness Survey. That you can also find on our website. So one bursary for the $500 is open to all post-secondary students, international as well. And one is exclusively open to Indigenous youth in Atlantic Canada. And as I mentioned, we also have the $1,000 bursary as well. So we're drawing for those in 3 weeks. So I really recommend that you check out our website in the next 3 weeks, do the learning pathways, do the survey, get your names in for the draw, because it is a very small pool. So you have very good chances of winning. And today we have with us 3 industry experts. So you have a fantastic opportunity to learn from them today as they will present some of the things that we cover in the learning modules, but this is really geared towards their respective companies. So you can get a better idea for what you might want to work in, who might be a good employer for you, that kind of thing. So we've got Jesse Cameron with us, project developer for ABO Wind. We've got Morgan MacGregor, the Senior Manager of Business Planning at Liberty, and Andy Carson from Irving Oil, who is the Director of Energy Transition. So first up, I'm going to bring Jesse out to present about ABO Wind. Oh, no, that's not what it was. Oh, it's over there.
Was it over there?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
There it is. That's okay.
Should have just as me. Yep.
Oh, the
Like on top left.
Oh,
There it is.
there it is. Okay,
Perfect,
perfect. And then to move through, you can use the mouse and click that.
perfect.
Okay.
Thanks so much. And thank you to the Center of Atlantica for having us here. Yeah, as they said, my name is Jesse Cameron. I'm here on behalf of ABO Wind. We are a renewable energy development company. The office I work out of is in Halifax. We have an office in Calgary. Hoping to get an office in New Brunswick soon. So yeah, let's dive right into it. The topic's going to be on wind energy and hydrogen projects. Talk about the workforce development in the clean fuel sector. Yeah, so a little bit about the company. So ABO Wind, as I mentioned, is a global renewable energy company. We operate in 16 countries. You can see them highlighted on the map. We've developed over 5 gigawatts of wind energy developed and sold. And globally, we have around 1,200 employees and growing quite quickly. Canada is one of the newer markets for this company. So I think it really just shows that Canada as a whole is really inviting international firms into Canada, and ABO being one of those. Atlantic Canada especially, we opened up our office in 2021 in Halifax. So since then, we've hired 10 people, and then we've opened a second office in Newfoundland, and yeah, continuing to grow quite quickly. So what does our company do? Essentially, we're right at the very start of a wind project. So we see the wind projects on the highways or driving through New Brunswick. My job is really 5 years or 4 years or 3 years before those wind projects are built. So there's a lot of like identifying where the appropriate wind speeds are, talking with community members, stakeholders, First Nation communities, whether or not they're interested in, joining or partnering onto these projects, and then working with biologists, community members on kind of the site preparation. So could be 1 or 2 years of environmental field work. And yeah, there's other criteria that need to get done. And that all happens before construction. So before anything happens, there's 2 or 3 years of planning that takes place. So ABO really focuses on that, but we also do construct projects. We don't always construct. Sometimes we will sell a project before they reach the point of construction. And then we also do long-term operations and maintenance contracts for the project. So we're always can be involved in those projects through the lifetime. So ABO has a international hydrogen portfolio of projects, and we've been in this market really from a research and development perspective for almost a decade. But more recently, and yeah, I can speak on kind of the 2020 boom of hydrogen, but since the market demand globally has really risen for hydrogen, and I can explain why in a minute. But ABO has really grown with that demand too, and we're scaling up our team and scaling up our projects globally. So you can see where we're located. We have a large-scale hydrogen project in those early stage development planning in New Brunswick. In Newfoundland, the project is a little bit farther ahead, and that's what I'm going to focus on today as an example of where students and folks could, possibly see themselves working at if they're interested in the clean fuel market. And then you can see a number of projects throughout the world, really. So, and then, one that's interested in Germany right now, they're building a hydrogen gas station. So essentially it's one wind turbine that powers, essentially there's, I'm going to talk about a main type of technology that makes the hydrogen. And then, the idea is that long haul truck can gas up at the ABO gas station and keep going. I thought it'd be interesting just to quickly talk about my background. So I'm sure it's, can be comparable to others. I went to high school in Prince Edward Island. At the time, they had opened up an engineering program that focused on sustainable design engineering. So I thought this was a good fit for my interests in renewables at the time. Although I stepped away from that for a few years, once I got into industry, I was wanting to travel a little bit. So I took a job that was based out of Montreal. We were working on sensors. And then my brother convinced me to join with him in a food delivery company. So I gained some experience with business, and kind of the mix of engineering and business is really what helps me on a day-to-day, because now working in renewable energy, you're always either talking about the technical side of the project or dealing with like stakeholders and right holders. So building on those relationships. So that's my background. I thought it'd be interesting to talk a little bit more about some backgrounds of the individuals who are really designing the hydrogen systems themselves. Mind you, there's tens and if not hundreds of other people involved in the process, and I think that's what's not necessarily highlighted in this slide. But of course, it's great to have experienced folks. The two folks on the screen, Dr. Fabian Hintz and Baktash, they both have large amounts of technical knowledge in the product that they're in hydrogen, and they're really sharing this vision with folks like myself who may not have a lot of experience, but who can work towards this industry. So I think that's what I want to touch on there. So in Newfoundland, ABO is working on a project where they're using wind energy, and they're converting that wind energy with the use of water into hydrogen. And they're doing this together with a company called Bria Renewable Fuels. And that fuel company is actually using that hydrogen in their refining process. So it's a method of essentially greening some emissions through their process. And it's really great whenever a hydrogen project can be used locally. So I keep talking about it like as if it's pretty simple to make hydrogen, and from this page, it kind of looks like it. But of course, if hydrogen was always so easy to make and available, why haven't we done it over the last 10, 20 years? And it's really just been a shift in obviously the federal government and not everybody, but a lot of vision towards cleaner fuels. And then also the technology has really advanced and made it, economically or close to economically achievable. So the technology I was mentioning earlier, it's called electrolysis, and they're huge machines. I don't know what they do, but essentially they take in electricity and water, and they separate the water molecule, and then you're left with hydrogen. Not that simple, but I'm making it very simple for this application. But hydrogen in itself, it's not the easiest molecule to move. So a lot of times you'll hear people talk about ammonia as a carrier of hydrogen. because ammonia, it's much more readily used today in transportation and ship movement across the ocean. So a lot of times hydrogen is converted into ammonia and shipped. Best case, it's used domestically. So in New Brunswick, you know, in existing industry, there is hydrogen being used today, and the demand is going to grow in New Brunswick. So I suspect, you know, there's going to be a lot of domestic use of hydrogen moving forward. I have no idea how I'm doing on time. 5 minutes left? Okay. Yeah, so I talked about these projects, you know, I'm planning for things 5 years ahead, and this is meant to show an example for a real project. So we've started working on that project in 2021, and it's not going to be COD, means commercial operation date. So it's not going to be running until 2027 at the earliest. So these projects take 6 years of planning until the first phase of it is ready for the refinery. And then, yeah, the second phase would be just essentially expanding on the number of wind turbines you have, and then including an export component. And then the third phase is just expanded upon the second phase. Yeah, so focusing on the last point on this page, there's really, in this project, approximately 300 permanent refinery workers and thousands of additional construction jobs and other types of jobs through the construction phase. Yeah, I think the next slide really shows a little more of the actual really specifics of the type of work that you can expect to find on these projects. So jobs in construction, large percent of work, and for approximately 8 to 10 years, and operations and management. Overall, the project will bolster local employment in the growing renewable energy sector. And then at the bottom, you can really see, you know, maybe something that aligns with your career choice specifically. So wind turbines, there's a lot of site preparation that needs to go into it. So anybody with experience or studying in the field of you know, civil management or any engineering power system would be involved in that category. And then there's heavy equipment operators, electricians, plumbers, a really wide range of projects. And then, yeah, one other thing, and I thought this was interesting, is even if, you know, you're not, you know, directly involved in a hydrogen project, if you're not employed by, you know, let's say a company like ABO Wind, you can always get involved in the industry through other means. For example, if you're interested in banking, we're talking, sorry, I got a cold, so it's just coming up a little bit. We're talking with bankers quite often, regularly, and they're the ones who are making hydrogen projects achievable. We're talking with lawyers and administrative folks who, you know, new legislation is being passed in Newfoundland and New Brunswick to enable these projects to happen. So I just encourage folks that no matter where you are in your career, there's always opportunity to get involved in renewable energy. And if you, yeah, want to find out more information about ABO Wind or connect with me or any of the other colleagues on LinkedIn, we encourage that, and always looking for folks graduating and job opportunities. So I think that's everything from me today. So I guess we'll take your questions after. All right.
Thank you, Jesse. Yes, I should have mentioned earlier, we are going to do a Q&A at the end. So you can hold all your questions until then. Also, what kind of programs do we have here today? Do we have any business students? No, are we all in the kind of STEM related engineering and power engineering?
Applied energy management.
Okay, perfect.
Any other programs, power and applied energy? No.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. So now we know who we're talking to.
Yeah.
There you are.
I think my own if that.
Do you want to close one of the problems?
Yeah, do that, yeah. So, yeah, we know that one's done, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we know ABO's done too.
Yeah, that one is ABO.
That one is.
Yeah. Oh, it's still presenting.
Okay, there we go, that's fine. There we go. Okay, perfect. Oops, got to close the other one too. And that one.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. Sorry, the folks online,
Include
including.
the sound, click the button. to include
Oh,
the
thank
sound.
you, Michelle.
I've done this so many
Yes.
times.
Okay,
Which one? are
number
we
two.
doing? Number two. There we go.
Okay. And we want to make it big.
There.
Okay,
Perfect.
perfect. And then,
Clicker.
yes, so you can use the mouse here or the trackpad on the button. Okay, and just that button right there.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for being here today. Really looking forward to the opportunity to present. My name is Morgan MacGregor. I'm the Senior Manager of Business Planning for Liberty Utilities. What that means is, because it's kind of a vague title, I'm responsible for our strategic growth and really transitioning our utility from a natural gas utility that it is today to maybe a more renewable, cleaner fuel. So I spent a lot of time focused on renewable natural gas and hydrogen. Today, specifically, I'm going to talk to you about Liberty as a company. I want to show you our footprint because we're not just located in New Brunswick, which might be appealing to those who are maybe looking to work outside of the province. But also, I want to share a little bit about some of the work that we've been doing in the hydrogen and renewable natural gas space. And then lastly, I'm going to show you a little bit about our culture and link you to where you can look for some job opportunities. So Liberty Utilities, we are part of the Algonquin Power Corporation. So if you've never heard of the Algonquin Power Corporation, we are located in Oakville, Ontario. So we are a Canadian company. We're split into kind of three sectors. We have our utility distribution system, which for us, we're in the electric systems, gas and water. We also own rate-based power generation, which falls under our regulated side of our business. And then we also operate power generation on our renewable side of our business. So we're kind of split into two. I work for the utilities side. We're very much located all across North America, lots of presence in the United States and Canada. We're also in Chile and Bermuda as well. But since we're here in New Brunswick, I want to talk to you about New Brunswick and Liberty NB. So here in New Brunswick, we are the natural gas distribution franchise. We also own the Tinker Generation Co., which is about 34 megawatts of hydroelectric generation and a transmission line. But specifically with respect to our natural gas franchise, we operate and maintain about 1,200 kilometers of pipeline across New Brunswick. We serve about over 12,500 customers in 14 different communities, which you can see highlighted on the map. We have over 100 employees in 4 different offices across New Brunswick, our head office being in Fredericton. We've invested over $500 million in New Brunswick since the last 20 years, which we're a relatively new utility here in New Brunswick. 20 years may not seem new to most of you, but a lot of utilities have been around for hundreds of years. We are really the energy choice in a lot of public places like schools, hospitals, universities, and retail locations. And lastly, in the past 5 years, by having customers switch from alternative fuels to natural gas, we've been able to save customers about $45 million just from choosing natural gas as their source. So Algonquin Power Corporation, and therefore us as Liberty New Brunswick, we as an energy company are really taking an integrated energy approach to achieving net zero by 2050. So we're going to be utilizing our electric systems. We're going to be utilizing gas and water assets to meet this target. And so this is just some of the opportunities that we've kind of highlighted and really the technologies that we're looking to pursue as we work toward 2050 net zero target. Greening the fleet is something that we're very interested in. So transitioning to renewable generation, heating with green fuels here in New Brunswick, that's something that we're very interested in. Specifically introducing RNG or renewable natural gas to our pipelines, as well as hydrogen to our distribution network. And there's many other opportunities that we're investigating, but these are kind of the 2 that I want to hone in on today. So I talked a little bit about an integrated energy approach. Michelle talked a little bit in the beginning about how we still need our gas utilities. And I stand before you today and say that, yes, we do still need our gas utilities. And I say that as someone who's a resident of New Brunswick, not just as someone who's working for Liberty Utilities. But some of the reasons that we need an integrated approach. So we need it for energy storage. So by repurposing the gas networks, we do have an opportunity to really store and deliver these large volumes of low carbon fuels like RNG and hydrogen that we're going to be getting into. We have the opportunity to boost renewables so they can be used in connection with each other. Jesse kind of touched on this with his project and how wind is going to be used to produce some hydrogen. There's also enhanced reliability and resilience. So if we maintain our gas infrastructure alongside our electric system, it really adds a layer of resilience. Natural gas is very reliable. And so if there's times where the wind isn't blowing or the sun isn't shining, we have the opportunity to use natural gas to displace some of that energy for generation. And we also have the opportunity to mitigate those hard to abate sectors. So a lot of large industry, they can't rely on electrification to meet their target goals. It's just really difficult for some industries, whether it's costly or just not efficient for them to transition to an electric approach. So natural gas can be a great solution for them, and then a transition to renewable natural gas and hydrogen. So more specifically, what are we doing in the clean energy space? I've talked about hydrogen, I've talked about RNG. Other places in our Liberty footprint, we're talking battery storage. I mentioned wind, solar, and hydroelectric generation. We also are investigating hybrid heating systems using electricity and natural gas, and then renewable natural gas. And one of the things that I always talk about is that we're really investing in innovation. I will speak a little bit to our guiding principles later in this presentation, but we're a very entrepreneurial company, and we try very hard to keep innovation at the forefront of what we're doing. So what are we doing specifically? We're working on hydrogen. And so Liberty have partnered with a company in New Brunswick, local to Fredericton actually, called New Ionic. And we are looking to build a hydrogen pilot production plant that is going to produce about 2,400 kilograms a day of hydrogen, which is a considerable amount. And again, that's going to be here in New Brunswick. And so I put up this very sophisticated drawing that I put together that shows very simply what's going to be happening. So this technology, Jesse talked about electrolyzers. Well, this technology produces hydrogen using natural gas and a microwave technology. And so basically these two feedstocks are fed into a reactor, and then hydrogen is produced and CO2 is captured. What we're going to do with the CO2 is we're going to look to greenhouses or breweries or concrete manufacturers to use that CO2 somewhere locally in New Brunswick so that we can kind of keep this cyclical pathway going here in the province. But what we're going to do with the hydrogen is we're looking to blend that hydrogen with our natural gas. And so we're looking to decarbonize our natural gas infrastructure. And this is one of the ways that we're looking to do that. And then we're going to be feeding either as a single end user, or we're going to be distributing to residential customers or small commercial. So I also want to talk about renewable natural gas. And I could sit here and talk to you about RNG, but we've put together a very good video that I think accurately depicts exactly what it is that we're trying to accomplish with RNG. And this is actually the first renewable natural gas project that we launched as Liberty, and it's in New York, very close to the Canadian border.
My name is Aaron Stauffer. I'm a managing partner for Stauffer Farms LLC for dairy operations.
My name is Ben Stauffer. I'm a managing partner of Stauffer Farms LLC.
Stauffer Farms LLC is located in North Lawrence, New York, which is northern St. Lawrence County, about 20 miles from the Canadian border. We're a dairy farm. We have 3,800 mature cows and also raise all the young stock, about 2,900 young stock as well.
The most compelling reason that we wanted to go ahead with the RNG project was that we try to do the best we can with our cows and be a good neighbor in the community and be more sustainable. And we see the RNG project as getting us toward that sustainability.
I'm Sin French, and I'm the Executive Vice President of U.S. Feedstock and Marketing. It's really important for people to know how important sustainability is to a farmer. They are stewards of the land, and everything they do is really all about sustainability. How they care for the animals, the type of high quality milk that they're producing, and the importance of their carbon footprint. We're helping them to take methane that was normally going into the atmosphere and creating a gas that consumers use to heat their homes.
So we intend to be able to continue operating the farm as before with the added benefit of the RNG project as an additional revenue stream and some additional environmental benefits.
My name is Mark Saltzman. I'm the Vice President and General Manager for Liberty New York Gas. So RNG stands for Renewable Natural Gas. Renewable natural gas means natural gas that is produced from a replaceable feedstock. So in the case of the dairy farm, it is the cow manure that is the feedstock.
I'm Brian Fliss, the Chief Operating Officer of ABO Wind. Dairy renewable natural gas has been around for a little while, and it's really picked up in the last 5 years.
With LF Bioenergy, we were able to come up with a system and design and project that we thought would fit in with our operation and not interfere with what we were trying to do or have to do on a daily basis, and still have the potential to be a very successful project.
So the process works by taking the manure from the barns that comes into our receiving pits and then into the digester where we capture the methane through the process of anaerobic digestion. That comes over to our gas upgrading skid where we clean it up and make pipeline quality gas.
Our customers really benefit from renewable natural gas in the primary ways by getting reduced cost biogas. So we're being able to buy that at below market price.
So we monitor the gas quality continuously. Liberty has given us a gas specification that we have to meet, and our analyzers constantly monitor and make sure that we're making on-spec gas for Liberty.
What it does overall is provide us with an opportunity to provide natural gas that has a much lower carbon footprint than regular natural gas. And then for farmers, it's an opportunity for them to stabilize their cash flow stream. Within the next 3 years, we anticipate having as many as 5 to 7 active RNG projects going.
You know,
I'm just gonna stop it there just because of time, but I think that gives you a pretty good idea of what it is that we're doing, kind of a little bit about renewable natural gas itself. It can also come from landfills, food waste, cow manure. There's a variety of different pathways that you can use to produce RNG, but he mentions 5 to 7 projects. I know right now we have 2 active projects. We probably have a pipeline of about 8 other projects in New York. It's actually a matter of finding enough space in our pipelines at this point because we're producing so much, we're going to be producing so much renewable natural gas. So the last thing I want to talk about is just our culture, because this was something that was really important to me when I was looking at companies to work for. Liberty actually acquired my company, which used to be Enbridge. And a lot of times people kind of fret through the acquisition process, but for us, I actually considered it to be a great thing because Liberty has such incredible strategic pillars and guiding principles. And I think when I was a student going through the chemical engineering program, these are things that I was looking for that resonated with me outside of just like, how much am I going to make, or what is it, the specific job task that I'm going to be doing. We have growth, operational excellence, and sustainability at the heart of what we do. We have several guiding principles. I mentioned being entrepreneurial. And one thing that we do have that's really important to me are employee resource groups. So we have our Friends of Liberty group, which is our LGBTQ plus group. We have EDGE, which is our ethnically diverse group of employees. And we also have our Women of Liberty group. So I'm actually a member of 2 of these organizations, and they're fantastic. And just lastly, there are so many job opportunities. I checked today and there's about 80 job opportunities available, not just in New Brunswick, but throughout North America, really. We do have, I think, 4 openings in New Brunswick right now. We're looking for gas technicians. We're looking for people who are interested in the energy space. So don't be shy. Feel free to check out our website, look up the opportunities. And if you do have any questions, here's my contact. Feel free to message me. Let me know. I can try to point you in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Okay, let's see if we can do this without reading anything.
Yeah. So then you have to leave.
I just wanted to close.
Okay.
You just need to come here, that's all.
Yeah.
You stay here and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I think you still need to share it though.
Andy, we are all set.
No, you're not sharing.
No?
The red box isn't there.
Oh, all right. So, okay.
Sometimes you gotta hit the voice, but just to get it on the big screen. Yeah, that's
Okay,
yeah.
perfect. Okay, so you can use that little button right there with the mouse. Do you need a timer or anything?
I can.
Perfect. Yeah, you just, as long as you jump at your phone, it'll be good.
Amazing. Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Andy Carson. I work with Irving Oil here in St. John, New Brunswick. Thanks very much for having me. I'm happy to follow Jesse Morgan in terms of talking about our company's perspective kind of on energy transition as a whole, but to really kind of focus on a few examples of how we think about clean fuels and other kinds of clean energy products and how they're increasingly becoming a part of what our business focuses on. Happy to tell that story and talk about the role that the folks that I work with every day play in driving that agenda forward. But I guess just a little bit about myself, maybe to start with that. I'm actually originally from here in St. John. Not sure if there's a lot of St. Johners in the room, but I grew up on the west side of the city. Went to St. John High, and not sure if there's any Greyhounds in the room, but you know, if so, great. If you went to St. Malachy's, please don't hold it against me. But I then went on to study actually economics at Mount Allison University. I studied law at Dalhousie, and I subsequent to that, through my career, did an MBA. But like Leah, you know, a lot of degrees and a lot of study time, but actually nothing really focused on the technical or the engineering or kind of the operational side of clean fuels. And that's actually entirely okay. Jesse had a great slide talking about all of the different stakeholders who are involved in developing and stewarding different kinds of energy transition and decarbonization and clean fuel projects. And I come from that kind of a background in terms of the contributions that I try to make every day. So I guess a little bit about Irving Oil. You know, depending on, you know, if you squint your eyes and maybe the angle here, we might almost be able to see the building that we're in, sort of behind the St. John refinery. But I think many people would be familiar with our organization, you know, based here in St. John. We've been an operating business for, you know, in a few months, actually technically 100 years, which is incredible. Founded in 1924 in a small community called Bucktouche, New Brunswick. We now own and operate, again, the refinery located very close to this campus, which is Canada's largest oil refinery. Processes about 320,000 barrels a day of crude oil into different kinds of finished products. And it would be one of the largest refineries in all of North America, actually. We also, I think, interestingly and uniquely, actually own and operate a refinery in Ireland. We purchased that less than 10 years ago near Cork, which is in Ireland South. We have almost 1,000 retail sites all across the geographies that we serve, and we're really proud to be, you know, consistently named as one of Canada's top 100 employers now for 8 consecutive years. So that's just a little bit about the company that I work for, about 4,000 employees, 4,500 employees, stretch across Canada, really heavy concentration in New England, which is our main market, but increasingly growth in the Irish market, which we're very excited about and which has really been positive for our organization. And I'll touch on a couple of examples of that in a moment. So by way of kind of talking about our perspective on clean fuel specifically and other kinds of related sort of decarbonization and energy transition work that we do as an organization. And I thought I'd start with this slide. And there's a lot of detail on this slide, but I would just sort of encourage you to focus on the 3 colored blocks kind of in the top sort of middle of the slide, because this is sort of from the standpoint of the work that we do, what we would call our North Star. It's our company's sustainability goal, our decarbonization objective that we've set first for 2030. And then kind of the longer term aspiration that exists as we think about what the world's going to look like, you know, through the 2030s and 2040s to 2050. So we have a goal that we take very seriously as an organization of reducing our emissions by 30% by 2030. So a 30 by 30 goal, and then continuing progress over the ensuing decades to align with society-wide net zero by 2050. Which is going to be an incredible undertaking. And I don't mean that from a company perspective, but for all stakeholders to achieve that goal. But we're here to do our part and to collaborate in terms of making that work with other organizations like Liberty, like ABO, and many other organizations in the broad kind of energy ecosystem. And there's a whole array of things that we have done, are doing, and are investigating doing as an organization that align with those objectives. And again, a lot of detail, but I thought I would actually just jump to this visual, which I think does a really helpful job of talking about the key focus areas that we have as an organization that align with those goals and that are ultimately, we think, relevant from the standpoint of you when you think about potential future careers in the energy sector or supporting the energy sector. You know, many of the things that, you know, I'll touch on here briefly and then in a bit more detail in the coming slides represent, from my point of view, represent more than a career's worth of incredibly compelling and exciting work. Work that is both challenging, work that I would say is very, not just challenging, but very beneficial from a compensation and remuneration perspective, but ultimately is really gratifying because you know that you're doing work that aligns with, you know, broad objectives that are really important in terms of reducing emissions on a global basis, on a regional basis, and doing our part to address climate change, both as an organization and as a society. So when we think about the ways that we focus our effort, you know, any organization can kind of pick anything to focus on. That's not very good strategy, but in theory, you could sort of pick anything. But as an organization, we naturally think about the areas where we have talent, we have capabilities, we have assets, we have know-how and experience, because those are the areas where we can do work and we can create the most value. Nowhere on this slide do you see Irving nuclear power. It's just because that's a very important part of our future, arguably. But from our point of view, it's just not a place that we play. We don't have a history in that space. We don't have a competency in that space. Other organizations do that. So from our point of view, these sort of 5 boxes represent the right place for us to allocate our time and our money and our development efforts. So we have a first focus on, what we call greener refineries, which again, from a decarbonization perspective, recognizes that the vast majority of the emissions that we produce as an organization come from 2 places: the St. John refinery, located, not very far from here, and the Whitegate refinery in Ireland. So if we think about a goal of reducing our emissions by 30% by 2030, just the simple math is, if you're going to reach that goal, you have to go after those parts of your portfolio that emit the most carbon. So this is a very detailed program of defining, sometimes small to very small to medium to large size projects inside our refinery that enhance energy efficiency and that reduce emissions. Technology investments, efficiency investments, and a variety of other operational changes that, again, incrementally ladder toward that goal. But when you sum up a dozen or 2 dozen small projects that each yield 0.5% or 1% of emission reductions, each of those projects on their own may not be super exciting, but when you add up the numbers, you can see how you can ladder to that goal. Hydrogen and new energy solutions is an incredibly exciting and flexible part of our strategy, which gives us the permission to focus on some of the products that actually Jesse and Morgan have already touched on, including renewable natural gas and hydrogen, and I'll touch on those in a few minutes. Biofuels is an incredibly compelling part of our work. I mentioned our work in Ireland. Biofuels represents a very, again, compelling way for us to produce a product that, from our customer's point of view, doesn't seem very different. A product like renewable diesel, which if you drive a diesel truck or another kind of piece of equipment that requires diesel, it's a product that is chemically the exact same as diesel, but has about 90% less of the emissions associated with its combustion. So products like that are very, very important bridge fuels to the future from the standpoint of heavy fleets, aviation, and other kinds of applications. The final 2 I won't really touch on here today in much detail, except to say that in a business that is in different markets, that is exposed to different kinds of credit regimes, which I won't go into right now, there's an enormous amount of trading that needs to take place to tie it all together in a way that makes sense. And that's an important focus of our work. But then, of course, we have a customer-facing business, our retail business, which represents how we serve our customers in a very real and physical way. So we think about our 9 to 1,000 retail sites across all of our markets from the perspective of how we can evolve those sites from an energy perspective as well, including the introduction of new energy offerings, EV charging, and other sorts of opportunities to help customers with their own sustainability journeys. So I've touched on that, and I'll maybe just kind of go through a couple of examples kind of quickly, and then we can have a bit of an open kind of Q&A. So I mentioned greener refineries and the important role that this work plays in laddering ourselves toward our sustainability goals. And of course, there's some live examples that I can point to, right now. We've just really completed about a almost $200 million investment in what we call Operation RAM, again, sort of just down the road at the St. John refinery, which represents one of our annual maintenance turnarounds, generally annual maintenance turnarounds, where we think about different parts of the refinery, we turn them down and shut them off safely for a defined period of time, 30 days, 45 days, 60 days. And then we bring sometimes 1,500, 2,000, sometimes 3,000 people to the site for a very fixed period of time to do maintenance work. So why am I talking about this? These are exactly the kinds of opportunities, the windows of time that we have as a company to make investments, change technology, to enhance operations in such a way that when we come out of turnaround, when we turn the units back on, they operate more efficiently, they operate with fewer emissions, and they ultimately, again, ladder us toward our objectives. So every time we stop and do a maintenance turnaround now, we focus on safety and we focus on reliability. But maybe unlike 10 or 15 years ago, we also focus on decarbonization, because those are the pit stops you have to make the changes required to keep driving emissions down. So that's an example of a recent project, again, very large one, very close to here, that we view as the foundation or the platforms for these kinds of decarbonization investments, ultimately aligned with producing a cleaner green fuel here for local markets and international markets. Again, I mentioned to focus on hydrogen and other sorts of products in our portfolio. And we have a business today that delivers natural gas. We have a business today that delivers propane as a relatively low carbon alternative to other fuels, but increasingly thinking about hydrogen and renewable natural gas as key parts of our portfolio going forward. We're the region's largest consumer of natural gas at the refinery. So every time that we can go into the market and find an RNG project similar to the ones that Morgan described and bring that natural gas into our operations, it allows us to not burn a conventional natural gas molecule and instead focus on a product that actually reduces emissions. So given that we're such a large consumer of natural gas, that represents a huge opportunity for us to reduce emissions and a huge, clean fuel opportunity for the local market. And then finally, hydrogen. Again, really just building on what Jesse and Morgan have offered. We really think about more hydrogen from a few different perspectives, but one of those perspectives is from the standpoint of our end customers who may view hydrogen as a new low carbon energy offering as they think about replacing their vehicles, as they think about different opportunities in our homes, or as they think about replacing, things like large tractor trailers in fleets, and are very actively doing work right now to try to seed the market with some very initial scales of hydrogen for distribution over the course of 2024, and look forward to sharing more information about that soon. I kind of touched on renewable natural gas and hydrogen to an extent, but I didn't want to touch on this as maybe not a clean fuel in the same way as a renewable diesel or another product, but again, from the perspective of our retail network, of course, a very sort of obvious clean fuel is the provision of electricity in retail sites. So we've really tried to take I would say, a strong leadership role in terms of hosting and now offering and developing on our own EV charging solutions as part of our retail network. When you think about where it generally makes sense to install DC fast chargers or fast chargers for electric vehicles, a lot of charging takes place in homes. So if you have a garage and you have an EV, typically that's where you'll do like 80% of your charging roughly. But when you are on a road trip, the kinds of locations where you're looking to charge are generally on highways, in and around communities, and are generally places where you'll already find large developments like big stops or other kind of Irving Oil retail sites or competitors' retail sites for that matter. So really thinking about some of our network as not just retail sites that sell gasoline and diesel into the future, but that also provide that kind of high quality EV fast charging experience is an important part of the evolution of that part of our company. And it's taking place with increasing focus as we speak. And I'm sure if you've visited a big stop recently, you've either seen NB Power chargers, or you've seen Tesla chargers, or you've seen Irving Oil branded chargers popping up with more and more frequency. So just an example of, again, how we're thinking about clean fuels from the standpoint of the fuels that we produce today, reducing emissions associated with their production and their use, how we think about the introduction of new products like renewable diesel, sustainable aviation fuel, and how we think about, again, other products from a customer perspective like hydrogen, EV charging, and renewable natural gas. So just an example of how we're beginning to integrate and continuing to integrate clean fuels into the broad portfolio of energy products that we produce and that we sell as a company, creating, we think, an enormous amount of opportunity from a career perspective here in St. John and in other markets that we serve, including important opportunities here at the St. John refinery. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. So now I'm going to invite our presenters to take a seat at the front, and we will open for Q&A. Okay. Okay, Michelle, you're going to moderate any online questions?
If I see anything online, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so I guess we'll start off with everyone here. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, yes, in the black hat.
My question, is for Jesse. Okay. In a hydrogen project, I want to know the role solar panel or a PV plays in hydrogen projects. And I also want to know the role the battery plays. What problem do they solve in hydrogen projects?
Yeah.
Hydrogen project.
Yeah, I like your question. And a lot of these projects, you'll see, I would say like a 4-to-1 ratio between wind and solar on the project. So I didn't mention it in the example, but our projects would consider solar because the intermittency of wind, as it's blowing, maybe, it can be stabilized by the solar energy and they can complement each other. Because the electrolyzer equipment, it really appreciates when the energy is as stable as possible in order to operate. You can imagine like your TV, if it was powered by a wind turbine, your Netflix would be on and off, or like super on and like dim at times because the intermittency of the wind. So solar can really help in stabilizing that. And it's from an economic point of view too. So in terms of the economics, it needs to make sense in order for people to build it. And then batteries are being looked at, again, to help stabilize these systems, and especially when the project it's off the grid. So if you ever heard that term in your class, or if not, essentially a project that's off the grid is either it's too small or too big, or it just doesn't fit what the grid operator is looking for. So it's off the grid, so you build your own transmission line. And then you would use batteries to help stabilize that because you're not on the grid where they have a lot of different technologies. So use batteries to help you in those situations for hydrogen. So I hope that gives you an idea. There's probably some other stuff too, but good question. I'm not sure Andy knows a lot, and Morgan too, if there's anything.
Okay. Yes, in the red.
Because of the, like you were just saying, because of the intermittency of natural resource energies, is there any projects looking into energy storage solutions other than a battery?
Yeah, I think I'm not 100% sure. The first thing that comes to mind is like storing the hydrogen. I know they're talking about using like salt caverns. Yeah, I think like hydro, any type of electricity can be used to make hydrogen through the electrolysis. It doesn't matter if it's hydro, wind, solar. It could be from a coal plant, and that's a storage medium. But essentially, it's just, what is the market looking for and how low carbon can that storage be? Nuclear is an option, there's projects that are using nuclear energy to make hydrogen. It's electricity at the end, right? So it's just a matter of what your end user is wanting.
I would just add that energy storage in general is like an industry challenge. And I think that's why hydrogen is so appealing, because it's a means to store energy. Referring to the pipelines too, using a pipeline, that's a great opportunity to be able to store large volumes of energy without having to put them into a battery, which is extremely costly. Like we already have the infrastructure in place. So that's why as a utility, even from an electric perspective, gas perspective, we like the idea of producing hydrogen through our renewables, but using our pipelines to maybe store that energy as opposed to like a battery solution. Because again, it's quite costly and really the technology just isn't quite where we want it to be right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, my question goes to JCT. Talking about production of the hydrogen gas, the transportation aspect of it. You did mention when you were talking that it's costly. So how sustainable is that one? And again, transporting hydrogen gas with ammonia ammonia is poisonous. I don't know. So when we're talking about energy, I'm an applied energy management student, and with the what I've received from my lecturer, when you're talking of energy consumption, we are talking of how to reduce cost. So I don't know.
Yeah.
If you are talking of production of hydrogen gas, we are saying it's not easy. It's not going to be as cost effective as the normal natural gas. So I want you to throw more light on that.
Yeah, I can speak to that, and the other folks can join in too. Yeah, two things. I like what you mentioned, conversion of energy. That's one of the biggest challenges of hydrogen, and especially with the economics of it. Like, you start off with electricity, and then you use the electrolyzer to convert it to hydrogen, and then you switch it to ammonia, then you ship it, and then you switch it from ammonia back to hydrogen to burn it to make electricity, or to make heat. Like, there's a lot of different conversion factors that are into it, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges that still exists, like, in the hydrogen economy. I can say, like, it's a very promising industry, but it's still very young in its infancy stage. Like, I think everybody knows what a wind turbine looked like 50 years ago or 20 years ago. It had 4 things on it and was made from wood. Like, the technology, it's still, developing. And, I think everybody's hoping that those conversions get better and better all the time. I know for like the electrolyzer technology, the efficiency of that conversion process is improving. And I think, hydrogen gas, if you can use it on site directly, so this is, the first part of your question, then you don't need a storage medium. Like, if a chemical processing plant that uses hydrogen or steel manufacturing is right there, you don't have to store it. But hydrogen, I believe, like, in order to bring it to a liquid, you need to like cool it to like 200 degrees or something. So like the storage medium is very challenging to work with. So by converting it into ammonia, it's much easier, and the infrastructure already exists today. Or like the best case too is using pipelines. If they're existing, you can, as long as the quality of the pipeline is suitable for hydrogen, because it's smaller molecule, you can transport that. So yeah, that's my answer, but what's the thoughts there? Does that help?
Is it cost effective
Uh,
compared to the natural gas we are having now?
I don't think so.
Not at this point.
Yeah, I think that's why the federal government is trying to help with some large subsidies.
Maybe one more question on that. Is it possible, if it is possible for us to use hydrogen gas at the gas filling station, is it possible to use it to drive a turbine?
To drive a turbine?
To drive a turbine?
It is,
Use
absolutely.
natural gas to drive a turbine, produce electricity. Is it possible to use hydrogen gas to drive a turbine so that it can also?
Yeah, I think, there's combustion turbine, or not combustion, but, there's turbines today that operate on hydrogen. So, yeah, you can, and that's what Morgan was saying, like, you can store hydrogen physically and then use it on demand. And yeah, I believe there's, a few turbines out there that burn hydrogen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah.
You were mentioning about the biodiesels, are they able to be made in the same refineries as like the one over here? So do you need a separate facility?
Yeah. The answer is it's sort of like in both. So I mentioned really briefly, when I was presenting about the work that we do in Ireland. So that's an example of where we use an existing conventional oil refinery. And if I can put it this way, we engage in what's called co-processing. So if you think about a refinery that's taking crude oil and then you're going through a process and you're producing different kinds of products. In that refinery, we take other kinds of feedstocks that are not crude oil, that are renewable in nature. The product that we use in Ireland is literally used cooking oil. So you can think about all of the food manufacturing facilities, actually even restaurants. There's a whole business of collecting those waste oils. And it's, you think about it as waste, but literally it actually has an increasing economic value because companies like ours buy it and put it through our refineries. And the consequence of that is we're producing, again, at the other end of the process, diesel. It looks, smell, it is diesel from every perspective, but it has not been created by using crude oil, but instead a product that is renewable in nature. So that's an example of where you would use a feedstock and put it through a conventional oil refinery and produce a renewable product. There are different kinds of technologies that use different kinds of feedstocks that are a bit more cutting edge in nature, although they exist, that would require almost a parallel refinery that would work and maybe look a little bit different. That would require obviously a significant investment, but it would open you up to a whole range of different kinds of feedstocks that might be more attractive to make your business case work. An example here in New Brunswick might be forestry waste. If you think about all the forestry waste that exists in a place like New Brunswick, or Nova Scotia, or parts of Quebec, or Maine, that some of those products can be put through a different kind of technology to produce aviation fuel and diesel that is very similar from an emission reduction perspective, but uses a different technology pathway. So it can be both.
Just adding to that, we're talking a lot about technology, and I think what we've talked about in terms of technology that we're investigating right now are pretty standard, common technological practices, but there are like so many up and coming innovations and new technologies and businesses and small companies that are coming from like universities and colleges who are developing things in-house that are really cutting edge. We have a hydrogen project going on in New York, and we're working with a university there, Cornell. And they have developed this really cool electrolyzer that's much more cost effective and uses recycled materials and things like that. And there's so many of these like niche companies out there trying to push their products. And it's really cool if you kind of dive into it and do some research, but it'd be cool to see some more of those things come out of New Brunswick.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, what's the advantage of using hydrogen gas compared to the natural gas? That's the first question. And the second question is this wind generation. I think, I don't know if I'm right, it has to work based on some factors. You can't generate electricity from wind just anywhere. I'm thinking it has a limitation. It has to be maybe before you do that, where you're going to generate the electricity has to, maybe there has to be some wind there or something. I'm just thinking about that.
And that'd be sarcastic. And just in terms of the advantages, I mean, the clearest advantage for using hydrogen versus natural gas is that when you use hydrogen, you produce basically water. There's no CO2 that is produced as a consequence of using hydrogen as a product. But of course, when you use natural gas, combust it, burn it, it does produce CO2. So just from an emissions perspective, from a climate perspective, that is one of the drivers behind thinking about hydrogen as either a supplement to natural gas or even as a replacement for natural gas, is that it's a gaseous product, carries energy, and when you use it, there's no CO2 emitted. So that would be a really, really key driver that is causing, many organizations, like all of us on this, here in the front of the room, to think about it in different ways.
I'll just tag on to what you were saying. Aside from hydrogen, if we talk about renewable natural gas, so hydrogen is not emitting, which is fantastic. But with renewable natural gas, depending on your feedstock, you actually have a potential to be carbon negative with your emissions and your overall life cycle analysis, which I think is pretty cool. Like cow manures, if you talk about like carbon intensities, which are pretty complicated in their calculation, but they're very, very carbon negative. And it's considered to be like a benefit, a positive benefit to emissions reduction.
Yeah.
Just want to ask, as the fuel for the future is centered on sustainable energy development, I want to ask whether there is a technological framework that any developing country would like to use it as a benchmark if they want to develop such projects.
Yeah. Well, Atlantica is more focused on energy literacy. Michelle would be better equipped to talk about this than I am.
Yeah, we'll be producing a report based on what we've learned. So the survey that Leah's going to get you to do later on will actually ask you what your knowledge is. And then as we go through this process, we'll evaluate that and share it. The tools are available online. It's a legacy piece. They'll be there for anyone to use and to learn about those the three clean fuels. And so certainly we would encourage you to spread the word if you need any more information, Leah's got the contact information. But the idea with this project is to really engage with employers, so industry, and connect with students around potential job opportunities. And I think, I'd be curious to hear, did you guys learn something today about these three companies that maybe you knew or didn't know before it kind of changed your mind? Was there anything in particular that kind of stood out to you? There's a prize involved for somebody who answered.
I have tote bags. Who wants a tote bag?
Just from there's a lot of company. Oh, did you have to answer?
I have a question.
Oh, you have a question. Okay.
Because I've been privileged to be involved in projects back to my home country. Both brand upgrading brand, what's it called, brown field, working on red field. And I think 2001, I was involved in so many projects like that talks about the zero flaring. But I'm surprised. I'm from Nigeria. And I'm coming to Canada for the very first time. I'm surprised seeing even Canada still flaring. Because there, I believe we were trying to say, okay, we want zero flaring and changing some flare stars, some various things like that, upgrading them. But this is 2024. Are we sure by it was 2030, it was 2030, I think, to people. Now, we shifted it to 2050. Are we sure we can actually achieve zero flare?
Zero flare by 2050. Sorry, just want to make sure.
2050.
So I would say achieving zero flaring is certainly something that many organizations are either focused on or even to achieve, but are making significant progress against. Look, I think we have an opportunity to, and it was on, at the bottom of one of our slides, you may have picked up on it, but it sounds like you did, in terms of the kinds of opportunities that we think about, again, consistent with that approach that we're taking to reducing emissions in our operations. Flaring operations represent an opportunity for us amongst many to contribute to our emission reduction goals. So zero flaring has some, I would say some pros and cons on if you really, really think about zero flaring on an absolute basis. But achieving significant reductions in flaring is I think, an important objective for the entire industry. And as you would have seen on the slides that we use, something that we're really, really focused on. I guess I would say to jump to like a different kind of zero, if I could put it that way, and to talk about sort of like this notion of net zero by 2050, which, seems like a really big concept. But when I think about where many of you are at in terms of like starting your careers, like I think this is going to be the overall sort of message that is going to bring shape to a lot of your careers. And Morgan touched on it already. There's things that we are all focused on as organizations that in 10 or 15 years are probably going to seem pretty antiquated. And it's a bit humbling to think of it that way, because it seems really cutting edge and cool and innovative. But you always sort of you go to a conference or you talk to another company in the industry, you always just get this sense that, geez, there's like a whole other world of innovation coming that makes the thing I'm focused on right now seem like horse and buggy, right? Like that's exciting. And again, if I were in your seats, thinking about launching a career in the energy industry, like I would be really excited about that. Because if it's just the solution sets that we have today, the technologies that we have today, achieving 2050 net zero, sorry, net flaring for a minute, but net zero, I'm not gonna say it's impossible, but it's gonna be a big challenge. But with the right innovations kind of coming beyond the things that we're working on, you know, I feel more and more optimistic, frankly.
Yeah.
And yeah, oh, sorry, I'm gonna go with the guy in the white shirt.
The hydrogen have a lower heating value than natural gas. So if you top up like up to 20% hydrogen in the natural gas line, you're gonna have to burn more natural gas just to keep up the same heat.
It's display, so 20% by volume is about 7% by energy. So yes, to answer your question, you're gonna have to do some displacing. Ideally, I would like to see hydrogen, RNG, conventional gas balance out our pipeline. I don't know when or if we'll see 100% hydrogen pipelines here, not in the near term anyway. But ideally, we'd like to get up to the 20% blend and displace that 7%, because we were just having this conversation the other day, and we were talking about even if you were to blend 5% by volume, well, you're displacing like hardly any of the actual energy, right? So 20% is kind of like the threshold. But that also has to do with like end user equipment and like what end users equipment can handle at this point. So maybe we will get to 100% at some point, but yes, 20% is kind of the boundary. But it's the boundary for like a number of different reasons, and a lot of them are technological and how equipment operates and can handle it right now.
You had a question, right?
Yeah, you refer to hydrogen as being used, not just as burned. Is it two different processes, or is used just?
So there's different ways of using hydrogen. And when I say that, I guess I'm thinking about a few different applications that I'll touch on this briefly. Happy to talk after you want to dive a little bit deeper, but when I say burn, we talked about it briefly, there are applications, whether it's hydrogen boilers or literally like electricity generation turbines, which, you know, we're even thinking about hydrogen combustion as being a form of use. When I talk about use more broadly, I think about it from the standpoint of hydrogen, and Jesse touched on this in his slides, hydrogen as an input, like as an industrial input. Our refinery here in St. John, again, just sort of down the road, it's funny that we were right at mentioning that. It is both the largest producer and consumer of hydrogen in Atlantic Canada. Like, we don't think of it that way, but there's a unit inside the refinery, it's called a steam methane reformer. When people come up with names for hydrogen production technologies, they don't make it simple. That's a lie. They're steam methane reformers. Some brand person should really focus on that. But the reality is that we're producing over 200 tons of hydrogen every day at the refinery. We're consuming and using over 200 tons a day as well to desulfurize and to clean up the fuels that we produce and sell. So again, you can combust hydrogen as one opportunity. You can use it in industrial processes the ways that we do. And sort of like a funny, maybe third use case would be fuel cells, like a fuel cell electric vehicle or for other fuel cell applications where I'm not sure you would say that it's being combusted technically, but it's certainly being used to create electricity to then drive the drivetrain of the vehicle, for example. So I do try to be a little bit specific when I talk about that. There's a pure combustion case or cases, but there's also use cases where the chemical has a value, where the molecule has a value that's almost independently broken in half by fire. But that way, yeah.
Okay, I have one last question for our presenters. You all talked about your career journeys a little bit, how you got to where you are. What's one skill, one or two skills that you think would be important for students to have in their career journey, specifically to the energy sector, or if it's clean fuels related, but just some other skill that they should acquire?
Yeah, it's not really specifically related to the energy industry in general, but something that I've really learned, and I preach this to my stepkids all the time, is that you really have to learn how to advocate for yourself. And specifically, what I mean by that is you need to be very confident in your skills. Like, people have hired you for a reason. And so don't be afraid to put your hand up and say, like, I know a little bit about that. Like, I want to take on that project, or I want to be responsible for that thing. And really, like, as you progress throughout your career, if you think it's the time for you to get a promotion, well, like, advocate for yourself. Like, make your voice be heard. It's very important because you are your own best advocate.
That's awesome. Good advice. We touched on it a little bit, and in fact, maybe the three of us being here today is an example of it. But I actually think there's some softer sort of skills that are really important to a future in the energy industry. And like when I started my career 16 or so years ago, the idea of collaboration between organizations, the idea of prioritizing stakeholder relations in energy work was an idea, and it was sort of important. But over the course of, again, my career, not that it's been like 50 years, but over the course of literally 15 or 16 years, the importance of that kind of work, the importance of those kinds of values and skill sets has just become more and more and more and more important. So if you think about energy as being just technical or engineering focused, or analytical in nature, I mean, that's all really important to be clear. But there's a softer side to it as well that, we all need to be really good at in order for the actual projects to proceed. I raise that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I think, sometimes I'm amazed at how nice it is to work with my coworkers, and I wish I was as pleasant to work with. Like, you might be, like, I consider myself like really, I don't know, fast to speak type person, but I just appreciate it so much when my coworkers have different, unique personalities and they're nice to work with. So I just, keep in mind that you're working with other folks. I think it's a great skill to have if you're like the most liked employee in the room. I just always be like, wow, you're such a joy to work with. Yeah. Keep that.
Awesome. Well, thank you. We'll wrap up our Q&A. So a big round of applause. So I'm going to put up a QR code on the screen just for a little survey for you guys to do. It will just be a couple questions about the presentation, if you have any other comments or anything like that. But yes, speakers, you can go sit back down and I will sort out the presentation.
I was actually, nobody asked any questions about jobs. You guys are obviously in a technical program, which is great and shows your interest level, which is awesome. But I was surprised with no questions about jobs. And I think if I can leave you with one thing around, the last question that the panelists answered, was that those soft skills, the ability to present, to have relationships, to build rapport, and sort of the softer side of things, that stuff's just as important as the technical pieces. So, and I know you're in college and that's really important to your instructors right now, but there's a reason why you have to present your final project. Right? So as opposed to, and usually work in teams.
Yeah.
As opposed to just answer a quiz or a test. So, yeah. Sorry.
No,
That's my teacher voice coming. Yeah, make sure to tell this way.
So for anyone who's done the survey, that pretty much wraps up our webinar and presentation today. We do have some free swag up at the front. You're welcome to take whatever you'd like. There's pens, lip balm, bookmarks, stickers, and all of them have QR codes on them that will take you to our website so you can check out the learning pathways and the Clean Fuels Awareness Survey, both of which will enter you in the draw for the bursaries that we're doing. So thank you all.